Hello everyone, I'm L.A. Little and this is your daily NeoTA Wrap, where we take a look at these markets and we do it from a neoclassical perspective each time, asking ourselves one question: what happened today? And now what does it tell us about the coming ones? I do this show 4 times a week, Monday through Thursday, broadcast at or before 10 o'clock Eastern Time. It's archived on YouTube. It's under the channel L.A. Little. You can catch it there, subscribe if you care, and anytime content is pushed, you'll be notified. As far as these markets, let's look at the ending numbers here. Actually in the red, the one that was a standout today was the Russell. The Russell took a beating, down 1.5%. The big movers on the upside were gold and silver, and that was a result of the dollar. The dollar was down, pressing at the lows. Let's take a look at the indexes and see what they look like. Here's the S&P 500. Now, on Friday, it got over this swing point high, was testing the other one tonight, or today I should say. Gets over it, gives it up, right back down, coming right back into support. If this doesn't turn tomorrow, you're going to see this thing trail back down again. You're going to see this range reinforce itself and say not so fast, not so fast, right? Bring it right back down into this area. So that's really the standout tonight in terms of what's going on. Actually, it's from here, so let me draw that again. You have the potential for an ABCD structure, but folks, that ABCD structure, that construct, has been failing over and over and over this year. I wouldn't be surprised to see it happen again. I have a lot of non-confidence. I have little confidence in these markets actually pushing significantly higher because of what we've seen. We're pulled up by the rest of the world, period. That's what's happening. NASDAQ, it broken out, got the extension, and then on volume, spikes higher, leaves some volume up there, and trails back down. It's going to come right back into the swing point high. Now, volume is there on that swing point high, but it's a thin one. It doesn't have much room. That's the retest regen. Apple comes out after the bell, trades up another 1.5% or so, but the NDX after the bell couldn't do anything. I'm not sure Apple's going to carry the day on a 1.5% rise, even with it blowing out its earnings. As we talked about at the top of the show, the Russell was the standout today. This one took a beating. Russell had a swing point high here, right? Remember, it had gotten over it, then could not hold on the bullish retest region. That usually tells you, right, that this no longer is up, but instead sideways. And what happens? It comes back up to test again, fails, right back down into the range. Russell doesn't want to go higher, and Russell's like stuck in this area. This will be the key area if Russell comes back, right? It will be the bottom of this bar, and it will be the equidistant difference, right, at the borderline of those two ranges. That will be key. That's what the markets look like on the indexes. What was really happening today was in the sectors and a little bit in the currencies. Let's take a look at those when we come right back.
Do you have retirement funds you want to keep invested, yet you constantly worry about a potential market crash? As LA says, you shouldn't worry about a crash until it's time. Through LA's extensive research, he has identified the key characteristics that are necessary for a market crash. In the 2008 crash, for example, our investors actually made money and avoided huge losses through LA's investment advice. Because the markets usually go up, our retirement service keeps you invested when risk is low and reduces your exposure when risks become elevated. There are 3 portfolios you can follow: aggressive, balanced, and conservative. It's a simple process at a reasonable cost that requires very little of your time. To learn more, go to our homepage, hover over Retirement Service, and click Get Started.
As I said, the real problem with this market, and I pointed this out last week, is that as the market has been, if you remember back on what the market chart looked like, right? They're all up here testing highs on the markets. That's not the case anywhere else. I mean, there's like one sector that's doing the same thing. Everything else is struggling. Here's the biotechs breaking down big way today, right? Huge volume coming into this thing. Folks, biotech just reported earnings. They've had all their M&A, and what's happening? They take a 4% hit today. I mean, come on, what's going on? They can't hold up there. And if you go down the list here, just look at these charts and think back about how those index charts look. That's the home construction. Here's the transports. The stocks can't get even over the breakdown bar, much less the highs. Materials got a boost today. That was on the weaker dollar. Energy held up on the weaker dollar. Although energy is at highs on the daily, it's bearish on other time frames. Financials can't get back to the highs. The industrials can't get back to the highs. Technology had volume, didn't quite test the high. Looks like it will try again tomorrow. Did do a doji today. It might get a reversal. But just go down the list. It's not there. The only one that had gotten to new highs was here, the XLY, discretionary, new highs. What does it do today? Engulfing, bearish engulfing, back the other way. This thing's coming right back. The sectors are not telling us this market's going higher. Matter of fact, the sectors are telling us it's not going to go higher. And so, if you think these breakouts are going to stick, think again. They're struggling. They're struggling mightily. If we go over to the currencies, we had a little push up in Europe again today. We had a push up in most of those. That pulled the dollar back down. Nothing big on the dollar. Let me grab the dollar chart. And the dollar came down, coming after that low, doesn't have the volume. That's going to be the test. Now, if the dollar breaks down here, then on a weekly basis, you would get that extension back into that area I talked about that I expect it to get to, which is that little area there. So that looks to be the target to me. So you're looking at, I think it was the January 19th. Yeah, that was the high that we were talking about as the target. World markets. The world markets continue to push, and they continue to push in a big way. And when we come back, we'll do the wrap, and we'll look at those as well as domestic markets in terms of where we go next. Okay, as we come back here, with some viewer questions. One of them has to do with Yum Brands. Yum Brands reported earnings the afternoon here of the 21st. They get the breakout, nice big volume, spike over this swing point high, right? And now have extended decent volume on the extension, gets over that high from the earnings. And so that's a nice clean breakout with an extension. If you look at it on the weekly, that break also comes on the weekly on multiple time frames. So you've got a breakout here, breakout over that. That's clean, right? And when you get this kind of breakout, it says you should get another 2 to 3 bars, continuation. Now, continuation, I say this a lot, it doesn't mean that it has to keep going higher. It can go sideways, just kind of mill around, but it's usually a couple bars to go. And what has been absent in this particular environment is these extensions actually working as they should. They've been failing a lot more than they've been succeeding. If you look at it here on the ABCD structure, it looks to me like it has a little bit to go. What is it? 70.50 to 82. So it's about roughly 12 bucks. It's 88, and it's trading at 87. So actually, I've got this a little bit long. It's almost done, right, on the weekly in terms of the extension. So yeah, it doesn't look like it's going to go too far. We'll have to see what the volume comes in like on the weekly to extend. And let's see what the monthly is. Got a breakout there. And what are we? We're at 20. We're not going to have the volume on the monthly either. So yeah, the viewer says, it's got all these things. Says the exact same thing I just regurgitated to you. He also points out that the bullish is only 12%, but you are extended on the daily. You know, everything or most anything is extended on the monthly. So, you know, it looks to me like probably what you're going to see is just what you were thinking, and that is that, you know, you're going to see some sort of a pullback and consolidation more than likely take place, and I would think it would probably take place in this area. Those are the two spots. So, you know, maybe you get a little bit more push, you know, some milling around up here, but eventually I would think this is the area it comes back to, and potentially it can come back into a retest regen somewhere out farther. But, you know, right now this one looks like it will hold and will probably do that 2-day or 2-bar consolidation over here on the weekly above the swing point high. So that one looks good. The other one from the same viewer asking about Micron. Let's take a look at Micron, see what it looks like. So Micron is earnings on the June 22nd. So the earnings were back here. So they break down, right? And Micron's one of these stories that I never know how they stay up where they stay up. They're always perennial losers, in my opinion. But somehow they do maintain. That bar, these two bars here, that's kind of resistance. It pokes up above it, but you can see it's having a tough time in that area. That's where your sellers are going to be, right? Anybody that bought from here over, they were in a losing position down here. They're going to want to sell. So all these buyers back here are going to want to sell as it comes back up. Everybody always wants to get even. So that's what's going on here. Let's look at it on the weekly. And the weekly, wow, it's even worse, because if you go back, I mean, this is from June of last year. Anybody that bought, almost everybody other than these few that bought down here, is in a losing position. That's a lot of overhead. This is not going anywhere. It's a little bounce. Yeah, it's probably going to head lower. And you got ABCD structures, right, that have been completing. Another one here. And looks like you could count this one here actually down. A little bounce, probably continuation. So I think Micron's going to go deeper. These are the bars it's going to try to come back to. Looks to me like this area right here is where it's going to try to get to eventually. Potentially here to start with, and then down there eventually. So Micron, yeah, the point that you bring up looks to me like it wants to go lower. That's the viewer questions. We'll come back with the wrap. On the world stage, the one common sector is the SEC. This is the Chinese Shanghai new highs. This thing just keeps marching higher day after day after day. Another 3% last night. I don't know what it's doing tonight. I haven't looked yet, but they should be opening up here pretty soon. Just keeps marching higher. There's no hesitation whatsoever. There's no breakdown yet whatsoever. And if we look over at the Hong Kong, we were talking about it trying to signal a breakdown. Well, I said last night, unless the Shanghai market fails and starts to come back, this one's going to just burrow over the top, and that's what it did. So Hong Kong, another, you know, what is that, about 3%, I think? Oh no, 1.3% last night, but over the highs. Elsewhere, Nikkei. The Nikkei was trying to come back and fades in. That actually is probably a buy as it fades back in here. Probably going to try to reverse tonight and head back the other way. And actually, I don't have the quotes on the DAX and the FTSE yet. I mean, the CACs. They were up today. They traded up into this area. So that still looks like that's range trade. But in general, and one I should also point out is Taiwan. This thing's making a monster run on volume as well. The Asian money, as they make those gains, they keep looking for the other Asian markets to go jump in, and that's, I think, what we're seeing in Taipei now as well. If we think about our markets, let's go back to those guys. The key market to keep your eye on is the NASDAQ tomorrow, because as that NASDAQ comes back in, you know, assuming it can now, Apple's going to try to push it higher tomorrow. But assuming it comes back in, this is the key test. Can it hold this area? If it can hold this area, stay above, close above the low of the high, right? That's a bullish retest, regenerate. And a bullish retest, regenerate says, hey, this thing can go higher. In other words, this ABCD structure just completed, you fade back in and you try to put another one together. That's the ideal case for the bulls. The bears, of course, are wanting to see it break underneath, come back down into this area, and then get a failed bounce back and then an ABCD to the backside. That's the key market. Why? Because the NASDAQ is leading the US market higher. As we saw in all those sectors, it's not happening elsewhere. It's only here. It's only in the NASDAQ. You've already seen the Russell try to break down today. Folks, we are staying up and pushing higher and higher as a result of Asia and Europe. Pure and simple. If Asia finally takes a break, or if Asia gets a good sell-off, you can expect this market to take a sell-off. We are followers now, not leaders. So watch the other markets and watch how these markets do when they come back and do their test. If they can't hold, they're just going to go sideways while the rest of the markets wear themselves out. If they can test, succeed, get another bounce, they can crawl a little bit higher. But as you can see, in general, the juice isn't in these markets. The juice is elsewhere. We're just crawling along as a result of it. I expect you're going to see this market fail tomorrow and come back in. I'm going to leave it at that. Thanks for joining me. Have a great night. Take care.